Business School. And tonight we have the great honor to welcome Shelly Lazarus to speak to us about ethics in her career, which she's observed in the field of marketing and being on the top of one of the finest marketing companies in the world. She has an amazing background. I'll give you a few highlights of them. She probably, from our perspective, one of the critical points of her biography is that she's a graduate of our school, MBA student, back in the time when it was really tough, right? Not easy like it is now. And then she worked her way up through Ogilvy Mather, spent a number of years in the ranks, but pretty quickly came up to the top job of the CEO in a very competitive field, where I think we feel like we know a lot more about it probably than we do. We'll learn more tonight about competing with clients and how that all works out. And she's also very important to us, a member of the board of overseers at Columbia. So she sees everything. She knows everything about us. When I look at her, I say, "My God, what she must know in my files." So it makes me nervous. And she has a bit more time to pursue many things she's interested in, having left the active role of CEO in 2012. And one of the interesting things about her background is the number of boards and activities which she's been involved in, including General Electric, Merck, the New York Presbyterian Hospital, the American Museum of Natural History, the Blackstone Group, September 11th Foundation, is that correct? And the World Wildlife Fund. Well, that's probably the MBA training part of you, which brings you to have the knowledge to be the Wildlife Fund. And then she also was named a number of times, I don't know how many times, one of the top 50 most powerful women, at least in the country, if not the world. In our view, surely the world. So thanks very much, Shelly. Come up and we'll have a chance to talk. So I thought we'd start off by talking a little bit about the field of marketing, which you may know something about. And particularly telling us about what this concept of 360 branding means. I think it's something you've been long associated with.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just, I start from a view that a brand is the most valuable asset that any company has. Its reputation, what it stands for. And this is not something that you build by 3 print ads and 2 television commercials on Sunday morning, although a lot of people think you do. But it's something that's built as, I would describe it, in a 360-degree way where everything builds the brand. Every encounter you have, from an article you read in the newspaper to the truck, the delivery truck, to who the people are who are hired, who are the employees, down to what the website looks like, how the phones are answered, what the lobby looks like. It's just everything. I have a colleague who likes to say that nothing compresses data better than a brand. Because, I say tied to you, and I happen to know this is true for those in the U.S., is that 70% of people can smell the laundry room in their mother's home. That's a brand. You see orange, you have all these associations of going down to see your mother doing the laundry. And, these are things that, by the way, they have a 55% share of market in the U.S. So imagine having to go up against a competitor whose basis for strength is all about the relationship that Americans have with their mothers. It's hard to describe as you just look at charts of pricing or where it is on the shelf or whatever. And so it's the thing that's fascinating to me about all of it is that you can't put your arms around it, because it's everything. And trying to figure out how you can move all the pieces to get people to think of your brand in a different way is what I think my job and the job that people have in marketing and advertising is really all about. And I would contrast that with, there are still people who, as soon as you say, I want to build a brand or make a brand stronger, immediately think of an advertising campaign. And to me, that's what you think of after you've thought of all the other 359 points on the circle.
So this means you actually, when you take a job, you walk through the place.
You walk through. You do. It's actually enlightening to most people in a company. You do what I call a brand audit, and you take every constituency that you have, and you figure out every point of contact that every one of those that each of those constituencies has with you, and then you figure out where you are and where you need to get to. So, for instance, one of the terrifying things for a CEO is, I go, here's a phone, call your company. It's terrifying. It's horrible. The phone systems in most large companies are just terrible. And so, he gets transferred to 7 different people. It's just they don't know what the phone is. It's one of my favorite endeavors has been working with companies, usually business-to-business companies, whose goal is to be easy to do business with. Until you call. And then you realize that they have 8 different systems, 45 different websites, and we can say that 1,000 times in brilliant advertising, easy to do business with. But it's belied in the first time they actually try to do business.
I always thought that was a strategy, that the customer service is supposed to be unreachable, right? So you buy the username, you buy the Comcast service,
right?
And then afterwards you're on your own.
You're on your own now, exactly. It's just when we took over IBM, and they had a real brand problem back in like '96. They had 2,800 numbers. 2,800 numbers. And there was no knowledge at any one place of what the other 1,999, 800 numbers were. So if you called software in Belgium, and what you called a number was software in Belgium, and what you were really looking for was the PC company in Spain, they had no idea.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And this was supposed to be this great global company. The other thing was you couldn't buy, I tried for Ogilvy. Mm-hmm. I couldn't buy computers for all of Ogilvy from one place. I had to buy it country to country. Now, remember, at the same time, we're running advertising that says solutions for a small planet. Not so fast.
Mm-hmm.
But I think being true, mm-hmm. making sure that you're true to what you purport to be, what you're trying to be, is critical. And if you look at it from the other side, it gives you an organizing principle as a company, mm-hmm. because at least now you know what you're trying to do. With each constituency, and then you can at least you can line everybody up and say, okay, here's where we're trying to go. Mm-hmm. How are you going to get there, you guys who are thinking about the sales meeting or the delivery trucks?
Yeah, I've been thinking about 360 branding. Probably I would have to fix up my office. That's what I.
Okay. Well, maybe it is who you are.
I'm sure it is. I have no doubt about that.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. You just have to be true to yourself.
So I want to talk to you about how things have changed a little bit. Social media and data analytics. Is that displacing the industry? Is that a disruption?
No new medium has ever replaced the old. There's always, angst and concern, and when television came, everyone said it's the end of radio. It just doesn't work that way. So, but people spend a great deal of time on social media, and you got to go where people are if you want to reach them. I think one of the great challenges for marketing and advertising, I sometimes get thrown off a stage for saying this, but is most of the advertising is display ads. And I don't know how you guys feel, but I don't think they work. So here we have the place where everybody is. We have a new way of communicating. And the business model is that how do you sustain it? How do you make money? You sell advertising. Okay, fair enough. It's good. We're figured out where people are. But if the advertising doesn't work, I don't know what we're buying. Mm-hmm. And what bothers me is there's no sense of urgency about this. It's just like, no, you people don't understand. You have 1 trillion people on Facebook. But I will tell you right now, I have more CEOs who are now saying, could you close the door for a minute? And I do. And the CEO will go, they keep running in here and telling me I have 1 million likes. What does that mean? Just
Right, well.
and what does it really, forget it, he knows what it means. What does it really mean? When's it going to translate into sales? Does it? No one is asking that question. It's making me nuts.
And you have your doubts.
I have my doubts about display advertising. Yes, I do. I think search is brilliant. Search is the answer. To get consumers to self-identify that they're interested in something at a particular moment in time, it's as good as it gets in marketing. So search is brilliant, and some of the customized programs are good. But just as you're on your way to look for something on the internet and something pops up, we now know. You know what the number is of the number of people who actually click on something that they were not intending to go to? It's 4 in 10,000. So for every 10,000, so it is inexpensive. It is inexpensive to buy it, but when you measure it by effectiveness, you got to stop and think, what are we buying?
What's the impact? But what about the privacy issues behind social media, the collection of data and the use of that? And are there certain rules which companies have developed for that?
Well, I think, yes, they have. They're very conscious of it. There are now chief privacy officers in lots of companies, so they are aware of it. The question is, and again, this is one where we're early days in all of this, is what are you willing to give to get something in return? What are you as a consumer, in terms of information, willing to give? And it's interesting that people are willing to let people know a lot of things in return for whatever it is you want to give them, either information or special value or something like that. But the real issue is making sure that there's a discrete transaction and not just thank you, we'll take your information and use it as we choose.
Right.
Use it as we choose, right?
Well, it was a shock to me to find out that Microsoft and Facebook, I know this happens all the time, have agreements where they share data.
Right.
I imagine it's anonymized. No, it's not anonymized. Just they actually put them together. Right.
No, they know. There are people who find it. I find it fascinating, but there are people who find it creepy when you've gone to a website and then all of a sudden, an hour later, there's something that pops up on your screen that relates to something that you just searched. It's just, it's bad enough when they keep showing you the shoes that you left in your cart, which works. But it's like, I don't know if I need you to retain all this information.
So is it possible to brand yourself as a company which gives privacy to customers?
Of course, absolutely.
Is there anyone's doing that?
No. But I think again, I wouldn't brand myself as a privacy. What I would do is, I think there are companies who have great respect for their customers and consumers. And any company, that to me would be a point of evidence, a live demonstration of the respect that you have. So, again, my own view, if what you are is respectful of customers, then I would expect you to have a serious privacy program that you communicate to me.
So I'm told that Apple is better with your data than Google. Do you think customers know that, or
no?
No.
No, I think it's a great
mystery,
right? Just yeah.
So another mystery is CSR. So is there, we often look at CSR as efforts of companies to brand themselves and to achieve some advantage in the marketplace. And yet the data seems to be very fuzzy whether or not that actually matters. But it does sometimes, we know that.
So I always have trouble with CSR because it's like something you do after you do everything else, and you run this little program over here at the end. I think there are companies that start with a true recognition of a commitment to society. And I actually think that people care. And one of the things that I'm positive about is that as time goes on, people care more and more. And the younger you are, the more you care. And because of all the information that's available these days, people believe they know the good actors and the bad actors. And I think if you fail that test, it doesn't matter if you give money to playgrounds. Mm-hmm. Because people won't even see it. It's like cognitive dissonance. I mean, I know you're a bad guy, so thank you for giving money to the ballet. I don't really care. So, Jeff Immelt at GE, when GE introduced Ecomagination, everyone went, oh, bravo, you care about the environment. And Jeff said, no, I'm not doing it to be a do-good person. I'm doing it because my customers, my business customers, are asking me for products that conserve energy, basically, that do more with less. And so this is just good business, that I'm doing something that is friendly to the environment. Don't applaud for me and I also recall, and this goes back to sort of the purpose of business. I was at a meeting in Davos where when you go later on, if you've ever been, there are all these do-good people who are sitting next to corporate chieftains, and everyone's congratulating each other. And it's so we were in one of these things where NGOs were talking about some of the progress and all that, and there was a moment where a project was acknowledged where money was given to help build a school in South Africa. Mm-hmm. And a woman raised her hand, and she was a leader in South Africa. I think she was in the government. And she said, actually, thanks a lot for all the checks, all the orphanages. But if you really want to help South Africa, speaking to all the corporate people out there, if you could just build some factories in South Africa, we don't need charity. That's the whole thing. It feels like charity when you say CSR. Mm-hmm. She said, what we need is commerce in our country. If you want to give back to us, if you care about the future of South Africa, do business here. Is that CSR? I don't think so. But it's much more profound.
Maybe if it's well packaged, it's CSR.
Yeah, maybe.
But the idea of actually creating jobs, of course, is a great thing to do.
Absolutely. It goes to the heart of, what is the role of the corporation in society? Mm-hmm. What is the expectation, the payback for doing business in a society? And I think it's these more fundamental questions that are really what drive people's perceptions of whether you're a good company or a bad company. Mm-hmm.
But you did say that customers have a sense of the good company.
Yes, they do. And sometimes it's based on poor information.
Right. So when Apple does something wrong, they seem to be
They cut them a break.
Cut them a break, right.
Because they love the brand.
Love brand. Right. When Walmart does something wrong, it's bad news. Right?
Bad news.
So
I'll tell you a great true Walmart story from years ago where I learned something that I never forgot. So Walmart decided that they wanted to make their stores greener. And so they were going to change LED lights and things like that. Right. And, so they asked us to work on it because we had done some other environmental things. We were not Walmart's agency. And so we went out and did some focus groups. We did these concept boards, of Walmart is going green. And so it took about 4.5 minutes in each focus group where someone would go, wait a second, aren't they the people who lock the employees in the stores at night and they don't give them health insurance? And so I've never had this before, but the focus group moderator actually called and said, I don't think this is very helpful because all that's happening is we're spending an hour and a half talking about how terrible Walmart is. It's just, and she said, I don't think you're paying me for that, right? You want me to find out how we talk about grade.
Right.
So, but what I learned from that is if there's this deep belief that the brand, the company, is not a good actor, has done things that are violations of principle for people, telling them you're putting in LED bulbs, it's just not going to work.
Right.
It's just not going to do that.
But that's to take that company. It's a company which is really stuck these days. Actually,
Right.
everyone has this case on Walmart, which they look at, and one of the questions which comes up, can Walmart, scale up and become Target or something better? Is that company forever kind of condemned in its space, or can it move?
It's I've come in to do stuff on Walmart in and out over the years. People don't like the brand. They don't like it, but they recognize it for having the cheapest prices anywhere. So on the one hand, they're a really strong brand because everyone knows what they stand for. It's if you want a really cheap price, you go to Walmart. And if you want anything else, you go somewhere else. And it's a problem. It's again, I've done some work for them where people would actually say, I can't wait till I make a little more money so I don't have to shop at Walmart anymore. Now, that's not a place you want to be.
The industry I heard you talk about with Gillian Tett a few years ago was finance.
Yes.
So what's happening there? Are they in a better position now? Or?
No. No, I don't think they are. I just think what I said to Gillian at the time was, she said, what will it take to get the public to respect financial institutions again? And I said, you got to stop the bad news. Because, again, all the pretty advertising in the world about what good people we are and we help you build your home and just that, and then you get a headline that, we manipulated the LIBOR rate. It's just like, no.
Right.
You can't. It's just not gonna fly. People aren't dumb.
Right. That's part of your 360 branding, and don't fix the LIBOR rate was one of the.
No. It's just it's kind of but you get one of these major news stories, and you're right back to where you started, and so it's not even worth it almost in a way until you can get to a place where you can sort of set the stage again and say, okay, different time. We're all signed up for a new program.
I know. So I'm going to ask you this question. You anticipated this, but the news these days is VW.
Oh, God.
You said Gillian Tett asked you all these hard questions,
I know.
I thought
it's
that
not a hard question because I can't answer.
Encouragement. I should ask you these things. So what do you think? No one really quite knows what happened, but what should this company do?
Well, first of all, it's a violation of everything, and outright lying, cheating. This is not like it's nuanced, right? This is lying and cheating that has, and they've been found out. It's not like they acknowledged it, right? It's not like we come forward and we found we have 4 rotten eggs here, and just we fired them yesterday, and they were found out, and therefore, they're in a different place. And I saw an article today where they're now assessing, and so it's not just like lying and cheating with no consequence. It's lying and cheating, and now the atmosphere is noxious, and we're all gonna die because we're breathing in all these carbons, and so the outcome and the consequence is also terrible. And you just got to, if I were Volkswagen now, you just got to play it out. They did the right thing. Somebody said they were, at one point, that they were trying to protect the CEO, No way, what's going to happen? He had to leave. You just knew, if he didn't know, then he should have known. And so then he's got to go. So you need new management to start. you need them to proclaim somehow a new ethic that they're going to adopt at Volkswagen. And then you're going to have to wait a really long time till people believe it.
Right. But one of the things that GM did was to have an internal investigation. They named the person. Is that part of the solution to rebuild?
I think so, although I think GM's was not brought to the high level that I think this one was. I mean, yes, of course you have to have an investigation, but I think you're going to find that a lot of people knew.
Instead of Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Yes, probably. That's probably right. On the elections, so we've got some people running for office. So I went to this thing. We never published it with Olivier Toubia, who's a professor here.
Right.
We looked at politicians as brands. I know that's been done before. And then we also put them on products. So which products do they look most like?
Okay.
And, so you get a sense of who's like a Coca-Cola and who's like perfume or who's like a flower. So looking at our politicians running these days, I'm not going to ask you about them all, but let me ask you about a few. So can I ask you about Donald Trump? What would be his brand?
I couldn't begin to. I mean, he is, again, though, you know who he is. Strong brands are, who he is. Mm-hmm. And he never disappoints, right? He's completely consistent. If you were going to go in and advise a company, you'd go, you need consistency in your brand, you need everything to be integrated. It's just, I can't even imagine. Who do you think he is? I mean, I have no idea.
Well, I think he's a Wharton graduate. It's definitely not CBS.
Okay. It's, a friend of mine who did work for him, was his lawyer for a while, said that he's actually really, really smart, but he's got a very limited vocabulary. I actually understand it better now.
Right.
So he said he has the most limited vocabulary for a smart man that he's ever met.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so when he says all those things that sound so stupid, you now know that he only has 20 words to work with. So it's so you assess him differently, I think.
He uses them well. He uses those words well.
Yes, he does.
So what about Hillary Clinton?
Well, Hillary's got a big. Hillary has the biggest problem a brand could have, which is trust. Mm-hmm. You can't be a strong, enduring brand unless people trust you. That's what brands are all about. Mm-hmm. They're trust marks, basically. They tell you why you should feel just trust in this idea, this person. So Hillary's biggest issue is she's not straightforward. She's always explaining things away. It's starting back with Whitewater when she was first lady. It's just there's always another problem. There's always another set of explanations. She's tricky, and people don't like tricky.
Yeah, the people are always kind of making her be on the. It's politics, right? They put people to defend themselves.
Well, she gives them a lot to work with.
She does give them a lot to work with.
It's like, and you just kind of think, why did she do these things? Because she's just going to have to explain her way out of them later.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, this is what I don't understand about Volkswagen, actually, is they were going to get caught. I don't know how it played out. How do you play it out? It's, I only have to serve as CEO for another 5 years, and then they won't find out. It's just like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think people are very disappointed in Volkswagen, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, as they should be.
They should be. But they had politicians who kind of accept a little bit that they're going to be having these foibles.
Right.
But a brand like VW, which has been trying to come to the U.S. for so long, it's for customers, you look at the car and they've been selling the diesel as the clean alternative here.
Well, I happen to know, because we do a lot of work for Ford, that I don't know what the current number is, I knew it from several years ago, is that if a car with similar capability had a Volkswagen label on it, it was people perceived it to be worth $800 more than a comparable car. So that was the brand advantages from the brand, which they lose overnight.
So what last set of questions I want to ask you. I told you I would probably bring this up is of course Mad Men, and whether there's a mad woman out there. So, what are your thoughts on the whole, the series? Is it
first
accurate?
of all,
What do they leave out? What stories do you want to tell us, Shelly?
First of all, I think I find Mad Men very boring. I've only watched 2 episodes because I can't. It's too slow for me. But so just to stage set, I joined Ogilvy in 1971. The first season of Mad Men was the 50s. So, but having said that, there was enough that was true in 71 that I think they nailed the 50s, and more than anything, the portrayal of women. I just think they nailed that. So when I joined Ogilvy in 71, there were not that many women in executive positions, but every single one who had started as a secretary. Every single one. And so that whole Mad Men, that whole storyline of, and in each case there was a guy who believed in each one of these women and said, you have more talent and I want to give you a shot. And so that was all true. There was lots of drinking, but it was no longer in the office when I joined. So you would repair. There were 3 martini lunches. That was absolutely true. But you would go to a restaurant, and then at 6, you would again return to the restaurant if you had been sober enough to go back to the office. So you would return to the restaurant, and there would be more drinking. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of smoking. There was a lot of zaniness. I mean, but that's one of the reasons the business is so much fun. It's just you have all these people who are crazy. But they're sublimated. So, they're crazy, but now they're making up stuff for products and campaigns.
I'm just asking as well, closing this is aspect of the fun of what you've done. So it does seem like you work teams and personalities and this tremendous creativity. Sometimes it's hard to find that in work positions, but marketing seems to have that. Is that a
absolutely? Well, it's all about people. It's who chooses to work in marketing. Who chooses to work in creative fields, and so you're surrounded by people who are a little mad, but creative people are. To this day, and I've been working in advertising and marketing for 40 years, I still can't predict how a creative team will solve a marketing problem. I think I know, and then they come at it in a completely different way. So you're always surprised. And you're using words, pictures, music, film, all kinds of images and sound, and so it's just interesting. And I've had some moments where I've had to get on the phone with people who've written pieces of music because I think we all thought they would be perfect for advertising, and have my head blown off by Jackson Browne was offended. This is such a good idea, right? Taking it easy, right? So the thing was we were going to do it for Diet Pepsi. It was Pepsi Light at the time, I'm taking it easy. I'm taking my Pepsi Light. I thought it was brilliant. He was so offended that he couldn't believe that someone had called to ask him to take his music and use it in a commercial. Just right. So, but you're talking to Jackson Browne. You're talking to people about how to take music, how to use it in new and creative ways, and the whole way you come up with an idea is to kind of just come together as a group and just think, just have fun, just throw ideas out. One of the most brilliant, maybe the most brilliant talk I ever heard on creativity was given by John Cleese. And it wasn't very funny, so that was a little disappointing. Right. But it was brilliant. And one of the things he said, he was talking to a very uptight, big complex corporation who had paid him to come and do this speech to sort of loosen them up a little. And he said, in companies where the number one priority is not to make a mistake, you can't have innovation or creativity. It's too risky. Because if the number one goal is just don't make a mistake whatever you do, you can't try something that's never been tried before because it might not work because you don't know, right? So there's no creativity. Of course, that's who he was talking to. They had no idea.
Right.
But then he went on. This is what the brilliant insight for me was. He writes with somebody. So John Cleese says, I never create without this other person sitting with me. He said, I write 95% of it, and he does 5%. He said, but he makes me brave because I go, oh, this is such a crazy idea. And he goes, no, it's not so crazy. And John Cleese goes, no, it's too out there. It's not going to. And the other guy goes, no, let's play with it for a while. Let's. And what struck me is that in my world, people work in teams, have always worked in teams. And I always thought it was words and pictures. And it is words and pictures, but it's much more than that. They make each other brave. So you build these little groups of, these little teams of people who sit around throwing out crazy ideas. And before you as your own editor abandon them, you need these other people to go, no, hang in there for a while, stay with it. I think there might be something there. Let's just keep going. And the need for a validator in the creative process became obvious to me. And again, just something that I had never thought about before, but we make it work within an agency because that is the way we work.
Right. Someone to say, take that step and move forward.
Yeah. And don't, we might throw it out 4 hours from now when it's really crazy. But until then, let's keep going. Yeah.
That's great. Well, one of the things I saw in the interviews you've given before is you have a great passion for the work you've done. And I think it came across great.
I do.
Tonight.
I do.
Let's open this up now to many people here and the questions which they may have. I'm going to let you control the crowds. Okay. So.
Aaron, you know too much.
So thank you for your time. This is great. So for a lot of the people who are currently at Columbia Business School right now, it's either first year thinking about how they want to spend their summer or second year trying to figure out what they want to do after graduation. So imagine if you were in our shoes today and Ogilvy wasn't an option. What would be some companies and routes and paths you would explore and why?
Well, if I were where you are now, I'd try to do the world is changing so rapidly. I'd try to find a company that was engaged in the new world, in one way or another, exploring it, either through social media or new ways of communicating or new ways of manufacturing. I mean, one of the most exciting things going on in the world is the Internet of Things. No one thinks of industrial companies as exciting, but it's amazing what's going on. I mean, factories, all the parts are talking to each other, and you can monitor all your aircraft engines, all your planes all over the world. You can tell how fast they're turning, what's happening to the fan blades. I don't know all the words, but but you sit in one control center and you can see everything happening before it happens. That to me is amazing. 3D printing is changing the world, and so I don't think you can make a bad choice when you're just starting out, as long as it's a company that sees a different future from where they are right now and is exploring life as it might be 10 years from now. It's there's something we were talking before about Amazon. I mean, they make up a new business every 6 months. It's kind of, hey, that's kind of fun. Now we're going to do cars. Now we're going to do, we're going to deliver things in an hour. We're really a delivery company. Now I think an environment like that becomes fascinating. Yeah.
Building off of that question, as first years and second years, we're looking at dozens of different internships and potential careers. How should we rely off of a company's brand through like a company presentation or just the employees that we interact with kind of on a superficial level to inform us in deciding which companies to look at?
Yeah, well, I think there, talking to current employees, that's where you're really going to find out how it is. And if you can find someone who'll just sort of step out of their role as company spokesperson, for a minute, you just have to ask a good question. Like, how do you actually spend your day, or how do you feel when you go to work in the morning, or but just to really get beneath the surface, because when I was at Columbia Business School, there were so many people who took jobs in companies that they thought that they did respect, but the nature of the job itself was so dull that they really didn't get to do anything, and so I think I've always said even within Ogilvy that you should always go work in a small office before you work in a big, work in a big office first, then make sure you work in a small office, because there you get to do everything. You have to do everything. And so I think what your actual role is, what are you going to be doing day to day is important. I have a friend who's sat on some really difficult boards. He has a new principle, which is he will not serve on a board where he doesn't actually know someone who serves on the board. Someone who'll tell him the truth. And I think there's a bit of the same principle here as, what's it really like? Yeah.
How do you think about branding yourself?
I'm asked this question very often. I don't like there's an implication in that question that you're somehow not going to be who you are. That you're going to kind of think up, this is who I think the ideal business person is, and every day I'm going to wake up and be that person. So I don't think it works. What works is authenticity. People respond to real people. And aside from the fact that I think it must be exhausting to, have to be somebody else during your whole workday. But I think being comfortable in who you are, being comfortable in your own skin, and being that person every day is eventually you and your brand become the same. You are that person. It's just, I do have an issue. I think Sheryl Sandberg's great, but I am not a lean-in person. It's because despite the fact that she says 12 times in the course of the book, be who you are, there is sort of an implied behavior set in between the lines of being very aggressive. It's actually, to me, it's being a man. Be yourself, be a woman, but be a man. Just whatever that means, and that's all stereotyped. But I do. So I think your brand is great. One of the great things about my career is that I've worked with so many different business leaders over so many different companies, and I now can tell you, coming out on the other side, there is no one style that works. There are so many different ways to lead, and what predicts success is whether it's true to who you actually are. Because, I've also seen people who think, okay, it's a big presentation before the 300 leaders from around the world, I'm going to ride a motorcycle onto the stage and pound a table and go, here's where we're going in 5 years. And, people are going, who is that guy? Because that's not who he is. So someone told him, his media consultant said, you got to be tough and strong and ride a motorcycle. But it just doesn't work. So authenticity. Yeah?
You give your thoughts on a number of brands tonight, but we'd be curious to get your perspective on the brand that is Columbia Business School. Maybe how it's evolved, how you've been a member of the community, and any shortcomings you see for it right now.
Yeah, well, I've always thought that Columbia undersells its student body and its location, and those two things are not unrelated. I just think Columbia has this wonderful, diverse population, diverse in every way. I mean, from the countries that the students come from. I mean, I was here graduated in 1970. I mean, even then, the school was so international, relatively speaking, that we had students who were here from almost every country in the world. And yet, I'm not sure people on the outside know that. So that kind of, I also call it cognitive diversity. People who have different experiences and different interests. Not everybody here is interested in finance, and there are people interested in new media and real estate. And so I think that's the heart of the Columbia brand. To me, it's almost a reflection of the city that we're in. And I think that city attracts that kind of diversity, people who want to live in New York. And I think you're in there's a vibrancy and a porousness, I think, to the walls, so that New York teams into Columbia Business School and Columbia Business School teams back out into New York. That I think is the brand. Now, how well communicated that is, I'm not sure. But once you have something to start with, you can just keep trying to go with it until people understand what it is. I have I know a young woman who's looking at business school right now, and she doesn't know that. She's looking at Harvard, Columbia, Wharton, and she doesn't know. She knows all about Harvard, and she knows all about Stanford. And she doesn't really know about Columbia. And I think that's a shame. So I can tell you that she's not getting it from the website, so that's not doing it. And it's worth a thought about what more we could do to demonstrate what this school and brand is all about.
Do you know how much time we put into that website?
I'm not even saying it's me. She's 25 and a great student who wants to go to business school.
Right.
So, she's got a great job, and now she's trying to decide.
Right.
So, yeah.
I had a question about some of the ethical quandaries you may have had in the world of marketing and advertising. How do you respond when there's a client who's trying to use you sort of as a spin doctor? There's money to be made, there's equity holders, partners, there's a business decision, but what they've done, they're trying to get you to repair their brand.
Mm-hmm.
So they come into conflict with your values.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing to...
Well, it's very tricky. The truth is that there are people who think that this is a daily problem. It's just it's not really. It's very rare, but it happens. I mean, there was only one instance in my whole advertising career where a manufacturer asked us to advertise something that was misleading. I mean, that was absolutely misleading. I can tell you what it was because it was very vivid to me. It was this product called Asper Cream, and it really didn't do anything except he wanted to suggest that it had aspirin in it, which it did. That the aspirin penetrated into your joints, so that if you had arthritis, you would put Asper Cream on and your joints would feel better. It just wasn't true. So we had a tussle, and we resigned the business. Because at a certain point, you just have to say, we can't do that. Now, there are we are the people who did Beyond Petroleum. We did BP. And it was all true. Actually, everything was true. That John Brown, when nobody else, the CEO of BP, was saying that climate change is real, John made a speech at Stanford and said, it's real. He got all these hate phone calls afterwards from the other CEOs saying, what are you doing? You've left the church. John then took $1 billion and put it into research in alternative energy. By the way, John is the way I was laughing this morning because John Brown said, I don't know why these people are digging in the Arctic. There's no oil there. So he was right about that. So anyway, but the Beyond Petroleum was not a lie. It was absolutely what the company was doing. And they also freely admitted and said, we're still taking fossil fuel out of the ground because there's no way we can provide the energy that the world needs right now if we don't use fossil fuels. So then the spill happens. Now that has nothing to do with Beyond Petroleum, actually, but they had a safety problem and they had a spill. So my own view, it never occurred to us for a minute that we would stop being BP's agency. I mean, these are people we've worked for years who we believe in. And so it's more instances like that where you have to make judgments about loyalty to people, really, and to companies. But my own view is, as soon as you're asked to say something that's untrue, don't. Just say, I'm sorry, we're not going to do that. We'll get other clients, but you can't play the game. Now, the other thing that's interesting is, there's all truth in advertising laws, so anything you say has to be proven. It's got to go through the standards of the, whatever the medium is. There are different sets of bureaus of standards. So we won't do political advertising because that doesn't have to go through any standards. It's the only advertising that does not have any review function. There's no truth in it, right? It's got no, but just think about it. There's no review function. You don't have to prove that you can say anything you want to say. And then, people could accuse you of libel, but it's after you've said it. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Alison Alumna from Volkswagen, and I heard you touch on this a little bit, but I'm hoping you can help me think through a question that's been on my mind. I think around the time when I graduated, is what is the role of business in addressing, I think you talked about lean in, what is the role of business in addressing things like racial and gender equity, and how can engaging or not engaging in questions like that hurt or help brands?
Well, I think giving everyone in the population the opportunity to participate in your organization is just the right thing to do. I mean, it's right in every way. And before you go into the moral issues and all that, it's just been shown over and over again that companies with more diverse employee populations do better. With more diverse board populations do better. In every way. And so it's just smart. I think what I would say is the distinction that I see is there are some companies who pay lip service to it, and there are other companies who really try to do something about it. And, you have to applaud, not the ones who do it for window dressing, not the ones who do it so that you can check the box and they get credit for it, but they do it because they think it makes them a better company, which is true. So the question becomes hard only if you don't believe that. It becomes hard only if you're doing it because you think you have some obligation to do it, as opposed to doing it because it's just good business. And I find myself very frequently now on panels debating Europe is imposing a quota system for women on boards. And it started in Scandinavia, where I think Norway gave companies 2 years to get to 40%. In England, they've decided they don't want a quota system like that. A group of CEOs have signed a pledge that 30% of the board will be women by, I can't remember what year, 2018 or 2020. And, and so the question is, should the U.S. do it? And I go, no. We don't. First of all, it cheapens the currency. It's just, I don't think we need to do that. I think we just need to impose some moral authority, some persuasion, and I applaud what Scott Stringer did. I don't know if you're aware of the New York City Pension Fund during this past proxy season. They targeted 75 companies, and they put a shareholder proposal to them, which was supported by the big investors and the sort of ISS, the I don't know what to call them, the
watchdogs.
The watchdogs, yeah, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And they The proposal was that if you held 3% of the shares for 3 years, you could then nominate 25 board members that would constitute 25% of the board. So everyone would still have to, the investors would still have to vote. Your guys would have to get voted in. But that's not even what was interesting or important. It's the 75 companies that they targeted. So they picked the 75 companies that they felt were egregious in their either lack of diversity, that was the number one criterion, lack of diversity on the board, environmental impact, and length of service of directors. So, and it passed. So this has now become like what's happened. So almost all companies now have a proxy access initiative. They have a proxy access bylaw that lets people. So this is just, before you go to quotas, these are pension funds that are made up of the population. They are holding the population's pensions, right? And they're saying to these companies, we do not like seeing a board that doesn't reflect the population of the people who we are collecting pensions for, we are investing pensions for. And you know what? They're all changing. So, with a little bit of pressure, but again, you gotta really want it. You're gonna want to do it. Yeah.
You talked about digital marketing and about how insurance activity. But I also talked to companies who have this trouble with the fact that consumers spend so much time online and they need to brand their social presence in some way. So I was just wondering what you think about that dilemma and where this the digital marketing is evolving to, what it's going to be.
So here's my frustration. I'm with you on that whole. I agree completely with all of that. You would think with that kind of urgency that we'd have hundreds of people trying to figure out how to advertise online. You would think, but that's not true. So we just keep doing display ads. So this is what I find frustrating. It's something like 86% of all the online advertising is display. So, I said this to Yahoo years ago. I said, this is a small part of my business, but it's all of your business. If I were you, I would take the 25 smartest, cleverest, most creative advertising people I could find, and I would lock them in a room for a year and say, don't come out till you can figure out an effective way to advertise online. And it can be done. We'll laugh about how primitive we were now, 10 years from now. But you got to do. I don't think it's happening naturally. I think you got to do it. And but I don't see that much activity happening in that front. Instead of doing that, Facebook is going and trying to convince everybody that you should use Facebook. I don't know. I'd try some other things. So,
what do you think should take that long? Trying to redevelop this industry.
Okay, so here, I don't know about the redeveloping the industry. Here's the promise of social media is extraordinary. The most powerful form of, to me, the most powerful form of advertising is word of mouth, right? You tell me you had a great experience with the product, chances are I'll go try it. The promise of social media is that it can institutionalize word of mouth. The problem with word of mouth is you can't control it, right? You just hope for the best that people will talk. Your product will be so great that people will talk about it. The ability to share views on products and brands through social media is the great promise of it. Facebook nailed it brilliantly for 30 hours until the privacy. Those 30 hours when they shared with everybody everything, every site you had visited, everything you had purchased, everything you had looked at, that is the promise of social media. If I can find out that you went and bought these things and saw these things and all that, now I'm really interested. So I think that's where the answer is. Now you got to calibrate privacy with word of mouth. And I do think that's where the answer is going to lie, but I don't find a lot of people working on that. But anyone who says, social media isn't valuable, that is not true. Just keep thinking word of mouth. It's word of mouth. at scale. It's word of mouth at scale.
We'll take about 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah,
here.
in the back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Two questions goes back to what we discussed earlier on, what I mentioned. The first one is, we talk about branding. You say it's far more than just advertising. It goes to operation, goes to trust.
Everything.
Trust. But in many big companies, when the marketing function is most, the primary role is to do print ads. How do they change the culture of the company?
Okay, so here I can answer that question. In the companies with the strongest brands, where brands matter the most, the CEO owns the brand. So that he's got a marketing guy who he assigns some stuff to, right? And the guy does that. But when the HR person comes to him with a hiring plan, comes to the CEO says, I don't know, are we hiring people who are going to be able to represent us, right? Are these the people who are part of the brand, who are going to be part of the brand that we're trying to build? And so to me, it's a CEO function. And you talk to someone like Jeff Immelt at GE, he owns the brand. He says it. He says that is my responsibility because, the brand value of GE is astronomical. When Gerstner came into IBM, they used to have some marketing people, down. I always love, because CEOs, they do this thing like, I don't know, some marketing people down there. It's always like this thing. But Lou Gerstner said, no, the brand it's what's keeping us from our future. If we don't fix it, we're never going to get to where we need to go to. So I'm taking the responsibility for the brand. It's Well, there's a direct correlation between brand value and financial value. And, again, my own, I think capital markets are as sensitive to brand as I think they're more irrational than consumer markets in some ways, actually. But even if you're just focused on, I'm a finance guy, I just care about the market value and my market cap and all that, people are people. The way they feel about a brand does not stop at the door when they go, okay, now let's do a rational valuation of this company. How do I feel about its future? It's all wrapped up in the brand. The reason Apple has the valuation it does is it's the way people feel about the brand. I had this incredible argument. I was telling some people a few weeks ago with a CFO of a manufacturing company who is being driven crazy by Amazon's market cap. And he's railing and going, but they don't make any profit. How can they have a market cap like that? Look how the profit we make. We have an 18% margin and I'm going, no, but Amazon could make a profit whenever they wanted to. It's the promise of the future, though. Every time you think they're about to let the money go to the bottom line, they invest in some whole new business that gets you even more excited than you were last year. And so that's a brand. That's not just a set of ads. And I think if you just let CEOs see that, if you just sort of shine a light on it and say, why do you think these, I often like to start with, what companies do you admire when I talk to a CEO? Chances are they are strongly branded companies. And some of them may not do advertising. Starbucks doesn't do much advertising, but they are a very strong brand. Okay, last question. There was one. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about who were your mentors and what were the lessons that you learned that you have taken with you this entire time?
Okay, so I have had hundreds of mentors because I never called somebody up and said, "Will you be my mentor?" But what I did was I tried to learn from every person, client, media person, just that I would come in contact with, and I would just observe them and see if I could figure out what made them effective or not effective. And then I would talk to them about it sometimes too, just not again to say, could we have a mentoring moment? But, just to kind of say, I would say things like, I'm kind of interested that you asked the question you did when you did. Now, why did the whole conversation turned, or how did you know that it would? Those kinds of moments. And one of the things that I found out is people are kind of flattered when you ask them about why they did something, or because people don't talk about that much. And so you can get into really good conversations with people about their style of leadership. And then you kind of become friendly, and then, you can call and ask them any question after that. But working in the business that I've worked in, to be able to sort of see across and talk to so many different people, it's really been the most interesting part of my whole career, actually.
The last question up there was way back there.
I was just going to ask, clearly you fall somewhere between the 1971 secretary and the sort of more masculine lean-in leadership style. I was wondering how your experience as a female worker and then a female executive has shaped your leadership style and sort of challenges you may have faced at the time.
I never thought about it. As odd as it is, because I was the only woman in the room for years, I never thought of myself as a woman leader. I was just one of those people who was thinking together and, talking. And so I never was anything but myself. I had no preconception of what a woman leader should be, of what a woman in the boardroom should be. I felt that I was very lucky in a way because I had no role models. So very often you look up to people and you go, oh, I see, I'm supposed to act like her. So because I didn't have anybody, I kind of just was who I was. And I always thought I was never afraid. I always thought, well, if they don't like who I am, then I'll go somewhere else. And it was it wasn't, I don't think it was prideful. I think it was just, I didn't care that much, about advancing or, I like to tell this, I'm going to close on this. I like to tell this story because it happened to me like 35 years ago. And it's a little voice I hear in my head to this day. And the story is that I was in my boss's office, and we were supposed to go to Unilever to present the media plan for the year in like about an hour. And the media planner runs into my boss's office, and she is apoplectic. I don't know if you've actually literally seen someone run in circles. This is the only time I've ever seen it. He had a pretty big office, and she's just she's in a circle because the computer was down. And in those days when the computer was down, you didn't just jiggle the cord. I mean, it was down for a while. And she's going, oh my God, we have to be there at 2:00, and I can't get the data out of the computer, and we're not going to be able to present the plan, and we're supposed to be there. And so my boss, he's watching this, he's sort of smiling. I could just see that this is, and he kind of figures out her orbit, right? So he kind of goes over and he grabs her, he gets her, he grabs her by her shoulders and says, Karen, what do you think they're going to do to you? Take away your children? And I can hear Charlie Fredericks in my ear once a week say, what do you think they're going to do to you? So once you know it, that what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, you're going to get fired? No, you won't. They're not going to fire you if you're good. If something happens. So, speak up. Say what you believe. If people don't like it, fine, they'll fire you, but they're not going to, and they're not going to take your children away. So as long as you kind of go through your work life feeling that way, thinking that way, and just living your principles and your ideas, and being willing to share your thoughts and just take the consequences, I think you have a much more fulfilling career and life, and you're not worried every night. And it's just like, so I always say to them, what's the worst thing that could happen? They're not going to take your children away.
I want to thank you very much. You know, I told you the story that the first time I saw you was when Sandra Navali and I, when I first got here, went out for lunch to a place with the staff. It was the Four Seasons, a kind of nice place in La Crosse. That's Shelly Lazarus over there. And it actually took me all this time to meet you.
Well, it's nice to be
happy,
here.
I'm happy I had the chance, and because you told me a great thing. You told me I did not have to clean up my office, and I'm so
well,
thankful.
I don't know you well enough, Bruce, but if it's consistent with who you are, I would keep it the way it is. Just
I'll leave it there. Thanks very much.
Sure.